Hey YouTube, Michael here. Listening to music's great, isn't it? Who doesn't love hearing something rousing like Carl Orff's Ode Fortuna, or something soothing like Beethoven's Pasta Symphony? It's therapeutic. There's a long history of music being used as part of health interventions. Allegedly, it was part of shamanic medicine for more than 30,000 years. The Egyptians also used music for healing as far back as the 4th millennium BCE. Greek physicians such as Xenocrates used the harp to reduce seizures in patients. A 13th century Azerbaijani scientist also wrote about music's healing powers. Music can influence our emotions, and emotions influence hormone activity, which can be measured in salivary immunoglobulin levels. Music, played to premature babies, seems to calm them and encourage better oral feeding. Children's concentration and test scores can be improved with the right background music, and is shown promising results in mental health settings. Music has all these benefits and more, but with none of the side effects of medication. But what if the musicians we listen to aren't feeling the therapeutic effects? Hello, and welcome to Transforms into a Guitar. I'm Michael Bonner, and I'm doing a PhD about performance-related injuries and the ergonomics of playing classical guitar. I thought I'd do a slightly different video this time, one in which I don't tell you you're doing everything wrong and insisting that I know better than you. Although, let's face it, I do know better than you.
Michael, would you say this PhD is going into your head?
No. Why do you ask? Orchestral musicians work hard. Really hard. They don't get to set their rehearsal schedule. The conductor tells them when they get to take a break. Aside from the percussionists, they have to sit the whole time, and they can't choose their chair. I've said enough about sitting, I'm not going to cover that again here. If they're performing a symphony, then they're up on stage, well lit, and in the limelight, and that's great. But if they're playing opera or ballet, they're stuffed down in the orchestra pit, in cramped conditions, and with less good lighting. Playing times for orchestral musicians, when you factor in orchestral duties and private practice, range up to 43 hours per week, with reports of 8-hour days. Sometimes they have late-night performances, followed by early morning rehearsals, and they have to commute, so sleep might be an issue, especially if they need time to unwind after a performance. So what? Find a job you enjoy doing, and you will never have to work a day in your life, right? Being an orchestral musician isn't always sex and drugs and rock and roll. Being a classical guitarist is, oh my god, you would not believe the after-show parties. But in orchestras, there are high levels of anxiety and depression, and some would leave their jobs if they could afford to due to the stress. Beta blockers and other substances are common for combating stage nerves because if someone isn't good enough, there are plenty of people waiting to take their place. Some have described their job as being like an abusive relationship or a drug addiction. The definition of a performance-related musculoskeletal injury is when pain, weakness, lack of control, numbness, tingling or some other symptom interferes with the ability to play at the accustomed level. There have been lots of studies investigating just how common injuries are amongst musicians. The 8 orchestral studies that I'm talking about here range from 101 players to 740 and comprise a total of 2,246 musicians from at least 164 orchestras in Europe, South America and Australia. They report that between 37 and 89% of them were in pain at the time of the survey. One article found 43% had pain in 2 body parts and another 43% had pain in 3 or more areas. The largest of these studies report that 63% of all respondents suffered from continuous pain for more than 3 months. Even more worryingly, many participants rated their pain above the level that officially constitutes a serious impairment to the quality of life. We don't even know how many have quit music altogether due to injury. The statistics on injury prevalence all give different figures, but numbers are consistently high, with seemingly very little being done to counteract it. But why? Has the musical world been taken by surprise by a surge of injuries due to harder music and more brutal practice schedules? In a word, no. Performing arts medicine officially started in the early 1980s, but several German music schools introduced music physiology in the curricula in the 70s. However, they were way behind the times, since the first edition of the British Medical Journal featured an article about pianists' injuries in 1887. But as far as I know, the earliest mention is in Ramazzini's Diseases of Tradesmen, published in 1713. Sorry, let me just... I don't know this number. Hello? It's the 1700s. Yep. They want to know when we're going to get our shit together. Musicians are afraid to talk about their injuries because it puts a big question mark over that person. Are they cut out for this job, or are they going to drop out at short notice? Those willing to discuss the issue mention a culture of silence. To quote the great Gary Graffman, nobody wants a wounded musician. There's an oversupply of healthy ones. Admitting difficulties is like jumping, bleeding, into piranha-filled waters. Unfortunately, because of this culture of silence, many musicians are unaware that they can even get help, and the longer an injury goes without treatment, the harder it is to fix. This isn't helped by stories of doctors telling musicians to just stop playing, or even go and get a real job. Whether or not music is a real job is perhaps a topic for another video, and not a doctor's place to question. But there's also the problem of what Jeeves would refer to as the psychology of the individual. Many musicians would continue to play through pain because of their love of music and their need for constant improvement. Your average musician has their whole identity wrapped up in the instrument. If they're professional, it's even stronger because they probably started very young, spend a large portion of their waking life doing it, and can't pay the bills without it because in some first world countries they aren't even eligible for welfare. So why have I brought you all here to tell you this? I don't know, really. It's not like you can do anything about it. Send them thoughts and prayers, I guess. That'll help, right?